So it's shortly after World War II. Hitler has been, I'm going to say, defeated. When his second in command, Hermann Göring, all right, is captured by American forces, along with 21 other high level Nazi officers from Germany. All of them are brought to Nuremberg. I was going to say Nuremberg, which is a track in Germany. It's not actually the right place.
Track.
Excuse me.
The
Yeah,
F1
all of them came to Nuremberg, where they are tried by a tribunal of judges from around the world for human war crimes and atrocities. But there's a catch. Before they are put on trial, they are to be evaluated by a young U.S. Army psychiatrist played by Rami Malek. He arrives at Nuremberg and is quickly informed of what his role is going to be there. He's introduced to Russell Crowe's Hermann Göring, along with Michael Shannon, who's playing kind of lead prosecutor and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to be. Robert Jackson is his character's name. And that's when we begin to get into kind of a cat and mouse psychological game between Malek's psychiatrist and Hermann Göring, who claims that he will escape the hangman's noose no matter what happens. We can pull off the ultimate magic trick and get out of all of this. And of course, the mystery at the center of all this that none of the Americans are keenly aware of yet is that at all of the concentration camps there are horrible war crimes. As far as they know, they were just kind of hearing musings that something was going on in all these concentration camps across Germany, but they don't know for sure. And then once we get into the film and we get the trial going, that's when we're going to start discovering, oh, things were quite dire and things were not all as they seem at Nuremberg. Advertised as a World War II thriller, the movie stars Russell Crowe, Rami Malek, Michael Shannon is in this movie. John Slattery is in this movie. Colin Hanks, newcomer Leo Woodall. Let's talk about it. Andy, what did you think of Nuremberg?
So I think I ended up liking this more than I had anticipated. It like you said, it has a really great cast. It's kind of a who's who cast, but it is very cheap in every other aspect. Like the production and set design, just you can tell they're cutting corners, and all the money's going towards our stars. But it is more of a drama. It reminds me a little bit of Silence of the Lambs. You have a young, kind of inexperienced psychiatrist interviewing a Hannibal Lecter character in Hermann Göring, who was the second in command in the Nazi government, and he has to kind of evaluate these men, but for the purposes of kind of legal strategies. Because the whole thing is, how do we prosecute these men? What are we charging them with? And the main thing is knowledge, that they knew what was happening at these camps, that they signed off on it, that they and likewise the defense is, we didn't know, we were just signing orders, we were just following no orders, the classic defense that was used. And so it's an interesting, like you said, cat and mouse between Russell Crowe, who is really good in this role. We kind of dogged on him earlier when we heard about this. He is really good. He's got to do a thick German accent the whole time, and he does well. He doesn't have to do anything. He just sits in the cell the whole time. And he's at that point of his career where if he's got to move, he's not doing the movie, but he'll sit down and and act. Yeah. Our B plots, I wasn't sure who the main character was initially, because the first character we meet is Michael Shannon as Justice Jackson, but he's actually the B plot. He's the one putting together the trials, because nothing like this had ever been done. They didn't know how to legally prosecute. They had to create this tribunal. They had to get an international coalition, international judges and lawyers. So he's dealing with that, getting this together. How are we going to get people to buy in? We have to prosecute, and it's got to be a slam dunk. There can't be any doubt. He has a couple of good speeches about how all this started and the purpose of all this. So it's very informational. If you don't know anything about the Nuremberg trials, which I knew very little, outside of that, they were just the Nazi trials, it is informative on that. You do kind of learn a little bit more about what actually happened.
Yeah, it's tough. I think this movie would be better if it wasn't trying to do so much. It's long. It's 2.5 hours. Directed by James Vanderbilt, who has produced a lot of really cool features, especially with David Fincher, like I think Seven and Fight Club. But as far as directing goes, it did one film in 2015. I think the movie's name is called Truth, and then has not done anything before this a decade later, right? So it's not exactly, I don't want to say practice director, but like honestly, yeah, it has not spent a lot of time actually physically calling the shots behind the camera, just producing on the side, and that's big in its own right. The movie has a lot of historical weight, that really becomes evident in Act 2 when we get kind of a really pivotal scene in the movie, probably the most bracing scene in the film, when we are actually at the trials and we get a 16 millimeter projector reel of like, well, here's what we've discovered at the camps. And then it like cuts to just like insane real footage that like I can't believe gets by on a PG-13 rating in this film is nuts. Like the stuff they've got in that, which is just real footage of like real bodies getting pushed around with bulldozers and stuff. It's like horrifying and gives huge weight and context to what this is. But I think with the budget and what's here, like I wish it had been smaller. I wish it had been 45 minutes shorter, or better yet, maybe add 15 and make it like a 3-episode limited series and put it on HBO or Netflix or something. You know what I mean? Like it just lands in this thing where it's like as long as Fellowship of the Ring and like it historically is grander, right? But like then you actually watch it and you're like, oh, this is hardly a World War II thriller. Like this, because there's not a lot thrilling happening about it. You know what I mean? It's more like informative and it's based on this kind of story of this psychiatrist getting to know like this very great and terrible man, and I think that's good for what the movie's supposed to be, but like it just doesn't get up to the level I had hoped. So I wasn't as into it as you were. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, plot, man. Like I know I kind of covered it at the top, but like I said at the beginning of the movie, Hermann Göring is captured. They are taken to Nuremberg, where they are introduced to Rami Malek's character, who is a sleight of hand U.S. Army psychiatrist. Got a lot of magic. He's like working a deck of cards and he can make a quarter disappear, and that's kind of a little bit of a theme running through our script here, which is also a screenplay by Vanderbilt. Like once he kind of gets talking to Göring, it seems like, I guess in my head, I thought we were going to have a bit more cat and mouse. And instead they kind of just quickly become friends. Which I was like, oh no, like, oh yes, no.
He befriends.
Yeah, this is the Friends with Nazi movie. Rami Malek is fine. He's kind of trying to do it. Honestly, the opening of the movie when he's coming in on the train and he's like a slick talking young hotshot U.S. Army psychiatrist. It reminded me of Jurassic Park. I was like, oh no, he's Alan Grant and he's going to see the dinosaurs, but the dinosaurs are Nazi war criminals, right? But it's not that. It's much more Silence of the Lambs. You're absolutely right. Like he's much more young Clarice Starling, who is like star person on the squad, who's like being put with this horrible monster. And Göring starts to reel them in, and he starts to kind of, I don't know, starts to do favors for Göring and start to like, yeah, maybe things aren't so bad, which makes this turn in Act 2 very meaningful. Michael Shannon is delightful, is our kind of lead prosecutor. And I did rip a lot on Russell Crowe being a fat Nazi, and I'm right. He is. He's sitting down in almost every scene, but unlike Steven Seagal, who I compared him to, he's good. He's very good. He's admittedly good. I can't get around it, man. He does the German great. He does the accent great. He's going all the way for it in this movie. It is not a very physical performance. But God, Crowe can demand drama, man. Like he can, it just comes right out of him. So like Crowe is the best performance in the movie, hands down.
Yeah. The central relationship here is between, Malek and Russell Crowe. And the Kelly Göring, because they meet quite a bit. And yes, they do. They don't want to admit that, like Kelly doesn't want to admit this, that they kind of become friends, which seems horrific and unthinkable. But I think part of what this movie, and also reminds me of things like The Zone of Interest and other more modern tellings about this period, is to humanize the Nazis, but not for the purposes of sympathy at all, but for the purposes of portraying these people as normal, everyday people who did terrible things, not kind of mythical boogeymen and monsters. Or that's kind of what Rami Malek's character says at the beginning. He's like, oh, maybe we can diagnose evil. We can say find out what makes them different from us. And by the end, he's like, they are no different from us. We are all the same. They just did these terrible things. They aren't any different from us, and we need to remember that, which is prescient for a lot of things happening today, frankly. which I think is, I mean, movie's been a couple of years into production, and it's still very prescient for things happening today all around the world. Some other fine performances. The great Richard E. Grant is in here as the British lawyer. Michael Shannon as the Chief Justice prosecuting this whole thing. He gets a couple of good monologues. Colin Hanks just kind of randomly shows up, has 2 scenes, and then he's never seen from again. John Slattery as the colonel who's overseeing the prison. It's fine. He kind of seems a little out of place for some reason. He doesn't have the period.
Yeah.
look.
Yeah, we were talking about it just yesterday, and I was thinking of Slattery. He's supposed to kind of be this. He's effectively like the army sergeant or general here that is in charge of keeping all of the Nazis alive and also under close watch, obviously. So he's got to command these guards and make sure everybody's good. And a few of these guys are actively trying to commit suicide. They've had a problem with cyanide capsules in the past because the Nazis don't want to swing for what they've done, obviously, right? Who would? You're right. Like it definitely makes a great effort. Well, hold on. So regarding Slattery, he just ends up coming off kind of phony in a way that I just didn't really buy. I wish they'd gotten a couple more takes with him of some stuff and maybe just kind of like, hey, try to lead into this a little bit more. I don't need you to be, Roger Sterling from Mad Men or anything, but like he just ends up kind of being this wide-eyed, kind of angry man who is strange. Also, Leo Woodall is kind of palling around with Rami Malek, who Leo Woodall's newcomer. You might have seen him in HBO's The White Lotus. He was in the most recent Bridget Jones movie. Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy. I think he's the young interest that Renee Zellweger's kind of chasing in that movie. Otherwise, I haven't seen him in anything. And he plays kind of this, I don't want to say lackey, but translator, really, for Rami Malek and the Nazis that he's working with. He's kind of got a backstory in there. It's fine. Like him and Malek are not really friends. Like that never really comes out, even though they do start to pal around a bit. I think Malek's character has this funny sort of like reflection of Göring too, and that Malek is very much motivated by writing a book. Makes it very clear in the open that, hey, I can write a book about all this and I can coast the rest of my life. And there's a great scene when Göring comes in and says, you're not like, you're just going to write about me because I'm the book. You're nothing. You know what I mean? Like I'm the one who's built something great. You have not built anything. It's messy. And you're right. Like it definitely gets at this notion of like anybody, this could happen to anybody. These are people just like anybody else. This is going to happen again. But like that also ends off, I don't know, coming off quite dour and ultimately challenging because you kind of know where the movie's going, right? Like you may not know exactly how Nuremberg worked, but sitting down, most of these guys aren't making it out of here. You know what I mean? Like we know that the trials are going to continue and that the Nazis who are on trial are probably not going to have a great ending, And so that makes a long runtime feel a little bit longer because you're like, I don't know. It makes these climactic confrontational scenes feel a little loaded because you kind of already know the ending. Like you kind of know where it's going.
Yeah, the drama is kind of neutered because of that. We all know all these people will hang after. I'm pretty sure people getting hung in both of our movies this week.
Yeah.
So yeah, that does kind of take a lot of the drama out. Like I said, I was really surprised when in the middle of the trials they do show actual footage from the concentration camps that's historical and accurate, and it was just kind of surprised because none of the rest of the movie is that serious, and then it gets super serious there. I feel like we can almost spoil the whole thing because it's history.
Yeah.
But yeah, the drama, a lot of it doesn't work entirely, but the performances I think save it as much as they can. Like I said, Russell Crowe's doing a really great job after playing a priest and an exorcist in his last 2 movies.
Yeah, it's just little subtleties that I think punch this up and don't just leave it in like streaming slop space because it's not. It was a VOD for $6 on Amazon. We rented it to check it out. Like Russell Crowe is the only Nazi who's not featured in like black or green. His clothes are notably different colors. It's like light blue, that he wears throughout the movie, which like kind of separates him visually. And starts to maybe give credence to this idea that he didn't know exactly what was happening at the camps, that he didn't pass those orders, and that he maybe isn't keenly, like, I don't know, maybe should be absolved of a little bit of responsibility, which is part of what's going on here. Like you said, there's that very arresting scene where they kind of show a lot of stuff, but also the movie does, I think, charmingly make a good effort to kick a couple Nazis while they're down. There's an execution scene at the end of this that's like made into a laugh at the end, like, which I think is a really intentional effort to kind of, you know, throw a little dirt on these guys and be like, hey, this all sucked. You know what I mean? This was all bad and you shouldn't have done this. And like, I think that's meaningful. I think its heart's in the right place. It just ends up being a little bit too much for me. Like, it's supposed to be this 2.5 hour epic World War II thriller. And like, it's a much quieter boiler pot kind of thing. You know, like I don't think Nuremberg's trying to be anything. I worry Nuremberg is trying to be bigger than it is.
Yeah. Like you said, it would have made a better series at 2.5 hours. It's way too long. It either needed to cut down and be shorter or be a 3 or 4 episode thing. That's probably in pace with the book. This is based on a book as well, not Douglas Kelly's book. It also ends really kind of strangely because it doesn't end at the executions. We kind of get some a
like
couple
text
of scenes
crawl, at the end.
Yeah,
like, hey,
text
here's what
scroll and,
happened.
like,
yeah.
So it kind of keeps going longer than it should as well. It doesn't wrap up very cleanly, but like you said, its heart's in the right place. It's just the execution didn't quite work.
Yeah, like I think what this is good, but it's not great, and that's okay because what it's trying to depict is a great evil, right? Like, and this great effort made by, you know, humanity to say, hey, we're going to put these guys on trial, and that no one will be a martyr, and that no one is above the law, even if the law is international, and we don't have like an exact set of rules and regulations for how we should try international courts for war crimes. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to kind of figure it out. And I think that's meaningful. I think the messaging in there is important because for people who don't know Nuremberg and don't know how this stuff worked, it's good. I honestly, they're like Andy, you said, it's a bit prescient because I think there's a lot of people who hope that there will be some kind of Nuremberg for political, I don't want to say enemies, but I think people hope that like there are people in politics who will be put on trial later. That later you will have to answer for these things that you did, right? Like that someday someone's going to come along and you're going to have to like really stand up for what you do or don't believe in. And I don't know if the movie does a good job of mythologizing that or not, because it almost puts it out of arm's reach. The ending is a little harrowing in a way that I didn't expect, but challenging. I don't know. We should get to recommendations. I think that's where I'm going. I'm talking in circles. Andy, would you recommend Nuremberg?
It's perfect for streaming because of its length. It's easy that you can watch it in parts. If you're interested in this period in history, in the Nuremberg trials, and what happened after World War II when we captured and tried some of these people, I think it is interesting for history buffs. For the casual viewer, I think, like I said, it's too long. It's a little slow. It's a little boring in parts. Good performances. The performances really save it. Russell Crowe is really good. There was Oscar talk of him. That didn't quite work out, but he's really good in this movie. A lot of good supporting actors. So I say perfect for streaming if you're interested.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. This would be great if it was streaming, but we had to rent it on VOD for $6. And if you rent it, you get 48-hour access, maybe 72. And I don't know if that's the best way to watch this. It might be better broken up a little bit because 2.5 hours, and that's a long sit for not quite the thriller that it's trying to be. It's something a little bit more bolted down, a little bit more grounded, and I think it's good, but I would say wait for this to come to Prime or Netflix or something, and then you could either take an afternoon and take a pass at it or like kind of watch it in bits because it's just a little too full. That's all. But yeah, that's Nuremberg. That's episode 326 of Off Script Film Review. My God, what a week. Let me tell you, dude, I was worrying about talking about Wuthering Heights all week. And now that we've talked about it, I'm sure that the review will go up great and no one will tell me that I was wrong and an idiot. So
We'll go
what are we
viral
watching
again.
Oh God, what are we watching? Big problems. What are we watching next week?
We're going to be taking a look at How to Make a Killing, which is a new comedy heist kind of style movie starring Glenn Powell and Margaret Qualley.